What's up, desktoppers? Xavier Rules here for Desktop Bodybuilding, and we are back with another video. And today is my 2020 Mr Olympia preview and prediction show. I'm going to do 16th down to 1st and preview every single competitor with recent physique updates as well. So let's get straight into it. And in 16th place with Chung Chol, very big, very round. I mean, doesn't have the widest clavicles, and he qualified by winning that 2020 Monsters in Pro against Samson Dowda, who narrowly missed out by only 1 point by qualifying for that 2020 Mr Olympia. Instead, Chung Chol qualifies. Now, his shoulder structure is actually slightly narrow, but he does make up with the muscle that he's actually got because he is quite thickly muscled on the upper body. I think that he needs to come in a little bit sharper from previous contests that I've seen. I think it's probably a time thing for him in terms of just conditioning that muscle, getting it as hard as possible, and, even growing a little bit more to be a real contender for that top 10 in a Mr. Olympia. In 15th place, I have Regan Grimes. Puts a ton of content up on social media, which I'm super thankful for. Helps me out in my job. But in this contest, I don't know if he'll be, have that hardened look enough to the muscle to really jump into a top 10 or even maybe a top 12 here. He qualified by placing 3rd when they actually did that in one of those European shows. And I think that he'll be just slightly outclassed in this lineup. But you got to remember, that would still be top 15 in the world for a guy who's 27 years of age. I think he just needs more time in the gym to really, harden that muscle and get that really, really conditioned and maybe slightly grainier look. Because when he stands there and he's just not really doing anything, he looks phenomenal. But when he poses, he doesn't get that real crazy pop and doesn't get that hardened look. So I think with time, Regan will get that. And maybe like next year, he could even place as high as top 10 in the 2021 Mr. Olympia. In 14th, I have Max Charles, and this is where it gets really tough, and I don't know where to place guys, because Max is a guy that comes in super conditioned, which can do really well in a Mr. Olympia lineup, but it depends if he'll have the legs, to match up with some of these guys that are above him, because he does come in super conditioned. He has a ton of muscle on his upper body. It just depends how it all comes together, but he's been working with Sachev, and at the Arnold Classic earlier this year, it worked absolutely phenomenally for him, and I hope that he brings it again, and I think that, my prediction will probably be wrong if he comes in really, really conditioned and keeps enough fullness. In 13th, I have Lucas Ozdil, a guy who placed, I think, about 8th in last year's Olympia, and this would be a drop for Lucas, but he didn't look as good a couple of months ago when he competed, where he actually qualified by placing 2nd to James Hollingshead. But I think he can place top 10 once again, but these are photos from about 10 days out. I'm just not sure if he's looking as sharp as he has looked in the past. I think he sort of looks about the same 10 days out as he looked about 10 days out from the last contest. I hope I'm wrong, because Lucas really does come in ultra shredded, and he has some really good posing as well. In 12th place, we have the Cookie Man himself, Juan Diesel Morel, who's really looking pretty phenomenal in this posing video, which was actually posted yesterday. Looking really good, not filled up yet, but he looks in great condition. Now, Juan is working with Chris Cormier, and Juan is one of these physiques where he has to eat a ton of calories, even when he diets. So it's going to be interesting to see if he actually fills up enough and comes in full enough, because he's a guy that really has to diet eating McDonald's, which is pretty crazy. And he probably diets now eating his cookies as well, but he's got that cookie business with his partner. So I think Juan, if he fills up enough and comes in really good, he can place top 10. But obviously working with Chris Cormier, I believe for the first time, it might be a little bit hit or miss, but I hope Juan does really well in this show. In 11th, I have Antoine Valiant. Now, this guy, he looks phenomenal. I picked him. He made me look foolish earlier in the year. I picked him, I think, about 3rd in the New York Pro. He came 7th. Next week in Cali, I thought, okay, well, he plays 7th. Maybe I'll put him in about 4th, and he won the show. So he's really made my predictions look pretty bad. But he's looking really good leading into this Olympia, and I think that he can crack a top 10. I've got him in 11th in my predictions, but a lot of these guys are very hard to place because they're all really so close, and we saw these guys going back and forth during the year as well. So I've got Antoine Valiant in 11th. Now in 10th, I have Justin Rodriguez, who's probably one of the shock guys of the year, who really placed really, really well. I believe he came 2nd in a few contests, and I was very, very impressed with Justin Rodriguez. Now, I suppose the one knock on him is the size of his legs. I think they're improving though. So he's got a ton of muscle on the upper body. He comes in super, super hard. He's got one of the best back double biceps around right now. Just very, very impressed. And he's working with the cement factory, which is AJ Sims, and they've really put the formula together, and it's working great for Justin Rodriguez. In ninth, I have Ian Valliere. Now, Ian, it's been an up and down year for Ian because he placed second to Hunter Labradov and he came into New York and he won that with a little bit of controversy. Some people had Justin Rodriguez winning. Some people had Max Charles, who was down in fifth, winning. And really, it was one of those ones, I think, where you really had to be there in person because a lot of people who were actually there at the contest still had Ian Valliere winning. So I think Ian's probably going to bring his all-time best at this show. He's working with Patrick Tua. This is the second prep that they're actually doing together. And we all know, the second prep with someone is a lot easier than the first because you're still sort of learning their body in terms of when you prep someone. So I think he came in a little bit flat, especially that Tampa Pro. Came in a lot better at New York. And I think he's going to come in better again. By these progress photos, he's looking like he's improved his back once again. And that's the one, I suppose, knock on Ian right now. Maybe his back and his chest a little bit. But I think he's going to improve. He's got a massive structure, which, like I said, works really well in an Olympia lineup. And I think when he competed in Olympia a couple of years ago, I thought maybe he should have even placed a little bit higher. So Ian Valliere in ninth place. In 8th, I have Akeem Williams. Now, Akeem's a funny one. This video is actually by Mike Polsonella for Muscle Meds, and this is a week out because he does mention he's doing an interview with Muscular Development, and they said on there it's a week out. So I think Akeem in this video, he looks like he's got some water to drop, but from the photos I've seen, when he poses, he actually gets those lines popping out. So I think that's just a water issue for Akeem at this point, and I think that he's going to come in much harder than he looks in this video, and he's got a ton of muscle, and he's got body parts. Like his medialis, which is the muscle just beside the knee, that has lines all through it, and people still knock him for his conditioning, but he really hasn't come in out of condition for quite a while now. So I think Akeem is a phenomenal bodybuilder, but really isn't getting his credit. He placed top 10 last year, and I think he can place a spot or two higher in this Olympia. In 7th place, I have Hunter Labradov. He's really the talk of the town outside of Brandon Curry and Phil Heath of this Olympia, and maybe outside of Big Ramy. But he's looking phenomenal, and there's good reason for it. Obviously, as well, being the son of Lee Labradov, who competed in Orlando back in, I think, 1991 or 92, I think it was, in the Olympia. And he's obviously competing in Orlando here, and it's very nostalgic doing his first Mr. Olympia. So I think Hunter can do really well. He's got a lot of detail. He's come in a lot harder from where he looked like he was about 2 weeks ago, and really brought it in, dried out a lot more. And he said he hasn't really even started carving up, and he still looks full. So I think Hunter Labradov can do some serious damage here. I think he can place the top 6, and I know he wants a first call out as well. So I've got Hunter Labradov in 7th place with the potential to be top 6. In 6th place, I have Dexter Jackson in his last Mr. Olympia. He's pulling out all stops. He's working with Brad Rowe with that newbie machine, I believe it is. And last time they actually were just using it on legs, and his legs improved quite a lot. So they're using it on the whole body now, and it's going to be real interesting to see at 51 years of age how this works for a guy doing his last Olympia, because I know Dexter, he even said in a video that he put up that, sometimes he, cheats a little bit or he eats something a little bit off the plan. He said this time exactly what George Farah is sending him is exactly what he's eating. He's doing everything he can with his training. So Dexter is pulling out all stops, and it's going to be very interesting to see if Dexter will actually move up and place maybe a top 4, maybe a top 3. Who knows what Dexter Jackson can do in his last Olympia. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below, and let me know what you think about all of this as well. Now in 5th place, I have Hadi Choopan getting his visa at the last minute and getting to that Mr. Olympia. Now, you got to wonder if that stressed him out at all in terms of, his prep. Because I know in myself, if I didn't know if I was getting to the Mr. Olympia and I was training for it, it would be pretty hard to motivate yourself to actually get up and train for it. He had to stay in the United Arab Emirates, it seemed like, for a little bit as well, not in his normal environment. So it's going to be interesting to see how that actually affects Hadi Choopan's prep. But this is a guy that seems to be conditioned year round, which I don't even know how he does it because he seems to always get better. So Hadi, I think here can really range in positions. He could be as high as, potentially even winning this show. A very small percentage chance of doing that with, the likes of Phil Heath and Brandon Curry and William Bonac up there. But there is a chance, and there was debate last year whether he could have, if he got the nod to actually win that Mr. Olympia, if that would have been debatable. And I thought he looked phenomenal. So I think he was a little bit underrated at last year's Olympia because he placed 3rd. Maybe if he placed 2nd, there would have been more debate between him and Brandon Curry who should have maybe won. But I think Hadi Choopan is a phenomenal competitor. Was he at his best last year? I'm not too sure. He looked phenomenal in Vancouver. I'm not sure if he was as good as that at the Olympia. So if he comes in looking more like Vancouver, maybe better than that package, maybe he could win Miss Olympia. Who knows? Now, in 4th place, I have Big Ramy. And now, I actually think that William Bonac and Hadi Choopan might be next to each other in the placings. But I really didn't know where to put Big Ramy because I thought maybe he's going to be like more 3rd, or maybe he's going to be more like 5th. So I'm really not sure. And Big Ramy's been living with Dennis James for about 3 weeks now. And it seems to be working for him. We saw that side leg picture that was released, and they're not releasing any pictures this time, and I think it's probably to take the pressure off Ramy, and I think that's a good idea because I know Ramy's competed at the Olympia before, and I think the year after he placed second, he placed about 5th or 6th, and he seemed upset. He put a message out to the fans saying, "I'm sorry I disappointed you," and Ramy puts a lot of pressure on himself, so if he can take that pressure off and not post photos and leave the expectations maybe a little bit lower than normal, I think that's a really good idea for Ramy. So I think he's going to be probably one of his best packages of all time. Having the watchful eye of Dennis James over him, his second prep now with Chad Nichols, I think that's going to be obviously a lot better than he looked at the Arnolds, where at the Arnolds he copped quite a lot and he wasn't at his best, and it was one of those ones where everyone was going, he can win the Arnolds, or maybe he's the favourite to win the Arnolds, and he placed third behind a 50-year-old Dexter Jackson or 51-year-old Dexter Jackson, and obviously William Bonac, who are both in this lineup as well. And I'm putting Big Ramy a couple places above Dexter, which, based off that Arnold Classic, maybe that's a foolish choice, but I think Big Ramy is going to bring a better package than he did earlier in the year, and I think that'll be enough to maybe jump a few of these guys. In third, I have William Bonac. Now, these photos, they were reported to be 3 to 4 days out by some other channels out there. They're actually 2 weeks out. I contacted William, and we're actually going to do an interview after the Olympia as well, which is going to be really cool. And they're about 2 weeks out, I think he told me. So obviously you can see he's in condition. He looks great. He's sort of like bursting forward and really sharp as well. And William's one of these guys, when you see him in person, he's a different story because his muscle just looks crazy. Like it's hard to explain. I saw him compete back in, I'm not sure what year it was. It's really his breakout show where he competed against Sean Roden in Australia. And I was watching that and I was like, this dude could beat Sean Roden. And I was in total shock. And he looked just amazing to me. And he's granite hard. He gets some crazy lines through his delts. You can tell there's absolutely no oil in there. And I think William Bonac, honestly, is a contender for this title. You've got to remember, he challenged Brandon Curry at last year's Olympia. He challenged Brandon Curry at last year's Arnold Classic. He won this year's Arnold Classic. He really should be getting talked about a lot more than he is. Now, in second place, this one was really tough, but Phil Heath I have placing in second. And as Brandon Curry said, he is an unknown commodity because we don't know what Phil's actually going to be bringing to this Olympia. Phil's, 2 years and 3 months older than he was last time. I believe Phil's in his 40s now. The physique is most likely not going to get better after that time, but it could get better in Phil's case because he has had surgery on that midsection, but we have no idea what it's going to look like. I mean, people can predict Phil's going to win all day, but they still really don't know what it's going to look like. And, it was an injury. If it has been repaired, if it has improved a lot, then, Phil Heath can run away with this Olympia because he has a phenomenal physique. We know from those back shots, he is dominant. So it's going to be real interesting to see how Phil Heath comes in at this Olympia. You pretty much know he's going to be really, really sharp. You pretty much know he's going to be pretty damn big. But it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to bring in at the prejudging as well as the finals, because in past years he's sort of been slightly off, maybe not quite full enough at the prejudging, and he's come in fuller at the finals. But obviously he's going to be very aware of that midsection as well, and he's going to want it to be as tight as humanly possible. So could that lead Phil to come in slightly flat? Who knows? Because obviously at the finals, when he fills out a little bit more of whatever he does between prejudging and finals the past few years, obviously it has worked really, really well. And in first place, obviously your 2019 Mr. Olympia, and I'm predicting 2020 Mr. Olympia, Brandon Curry. Now, some people might say I'm biased as well because I, talk to Brandon, I help him out with his channel and whatnot as well. But the vibe I'm getting from Brandon is that he's very, very confident. He really doesn't let anything faze him. He seems very, very relaxed all the time. And when I see that from someone, I just see that as confidence. And I think Brandon is looking his best ever. I actually did a video. I suggest you guys actually watch it. There's a card at the top of the screen right now. You can click on that and I compare his 2019 version to the 2020 photo that was leaked just a couple of days ago. And I also compare last year 4-week out training footage to this year's 4-week out training footage, which I actually edited up and I didn't put any filters on it or anything like that. It's just literally iPhone footage sent to me as it was last year as well. So I'm predicting Brandon Curry to win the 2020 Mr. Olympia. But guys, let me know your predictions in the comments below. Give me a top 5, give me a top 10, or just let me know who you think is actually going to win the contest. Because I love to get a sort of consensus from you guys as well. When I read through all the comments, I just don't always have time to get back to every single person, especially this weekend where I'm pumping out a ton of videos. So also make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell button. That way you'll be notified of every video that goes up from myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding, all my 2020 Mr. Olympia breaking news, views, and all that sort of stuff as well. But before I wrap up this video, head to MrOlympia.com, order the pay-per-view. It's going to be absolutely awesome. It's one not to be missed out on, and make sure you obviously check back at Desktop Bodybuilding. So that's it for me. For Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding, we are out.